All right, I need you to take a deep breath before diving into this one, because the story we're about to talk about is not only strange, it's downright eerie. It's got obsession, mental health, love, and something that will make your skin crawl. Are you ready? All right, I want you for a second to imagine a doctor. You've got your life figured out. You've got a stable job, a steady career, and you're respected for your work. You're not crazy, but you're definitely not the kind of person who always follow the typical rules either. And then one day, something happens that changes everything. You meet her, the most beautiful woman in the whole world, the one. And there's just one catch. She's not well. She's sick, very, very sick. And now you are the doctor. After all, you've dealt with illnesses before, but this time it's different. She is beautiful, full of life. And you feel this connection that almost feels too strong towards her. You're doing everything you can to save her, but despite all the expertise, nothing is enough, and she dies. Oh God, she passes on. Now, here's the part where it gets weird. You see, most people would move on after the loss, right? But not this doctor. This wasn't just any doctor. His obsession went beyond the usual. This wasn't the kind of loss he could just grieve and let go of. He wasn't ready to say goodbye. No, not yet. Not ever. This is where the story goes from tragic to chilling. After her death, instead of letting her go like any normal person would, the doctor decided he wasn't going to accept it. He couldn't. And that's when things tend to take a dark turn. The doctor, still deeply obsessed with her, somehow convinced others to let him take her body home. And no, he didn't bury her. No, he didn't hold a traditional funeral. No, he did something much worse. He kept her with him in his own house. At first, no one suspected anything. After all, he was a man of science, Surely, what he was doing was a form of grieving, a strange personal form, but still a form. He didn't mean to hurt anyone, no. But over time, his actions became more disturbing. He started preserving her body. He used chemicals to keep it from decaying, even going so far as to reconstruct parts of her body. For example, he sewed her skin back together. He replaced this body's eyes with glass so it can look natural. And he created a wig made from her own hair. You can imagine this obsession, guys. So he believed in his heart that he was keeping her alive, that his love could transcend death. He was convinced that their bond was eternal. Now, this was all happening behind closed doors, in the privacy of his home. He had his own little secret, and for a while, no one knew about it. He would go on as if everything was normal, living with her, dressing her, talking to her as if she were still the person he loved. He even slept next to her, whispering his thoughts, convinced she could still hear him. But it didn't stop there. The obsession grew darker. In the stillness of his home, the doctor began engaging in physical intimacy with her preserved body. Oh God, this is where it gets extreme. He was having sexual intimacy with the dead person. It was a twisted act where the line between love and madness completely blurred. He believed in his heart that she was still with him, that their connection went beyond death. This was not just about preserving her body for memories. This was him living with her in the most disturbing way possible. He couldn't let go. His obsession took over every aspect of his life, and he clung to the illusion that she was still his, even in death. But of course, secrets like this don't stay hidden forever. In 1940, the truth came out crashing down. The authorities discovered what had been going on in this house. Imagine walking into a room and seeing what they found. A woman's body sitting in a chair, perfectly preserved, wearing a beautiful gown, her glass eyes staring ahead as if she were alive. It wasn't just a macabre sight, it was a terrifying one. So, who was this doctor? Who was this man who couldn't let go, who crossed a line that few could ever begin to understand? His name was Dr. Carl Tanzler, a radiology technician from Florida. Oh, Florida. The woman he obsessed over was Elena Hoyos, a 22-year-old Cuban woman who had died of tuberculosis. Carl, obsessed with her from the moment they met, couldn't fathom her death and instead chose to preserve her body, even though everyone around him was trying to move on. His story is one of those most bizarre, disturbing, and strangely tragic tales in medical history. Now, after the authorities found out, Carl was arrested, obviously, but the charges weren't as clear-cut as you might think. He didn't murder her, right? He didn't take her life, right? But what he did next was so disturbing that it sent shockwaves through the public. Some felt pity for him, others thought he was mad. But no one could deny the sheer strangeness of his obsession. He was convicted, of course, with indecent treatment of a corpse, but the punishment was light. He spent some time in a mental institution, but soon he was released. He never really let go of his obsession with Elena, continuing to talk about her as if she was still alive. Carl believed their souls were forever entwined and their love would never die. Even in his later years, he claimed that they would be reunited in the afterlife. See, Carl Tanzler lived the rest of his life in Florida, dying in obscurity in 1952. But his story didn't die with him. It's still talked about today, raising questions about love, obsession, and the boundaries between grief and madness. So how fucking love really go? What happens when grief takes over someone's mind? And can obsession turn into something so powerful that reality doesn't even matter anymore? Carl Tanzler was obsessed with Elena, that is for sure. But how far did that obsession really go? I can only imagine what else he might have been doing with that corpse in there. Was this just a tragic tale of a man unable to cope with loss? Or was it something darker? Something far, far more disturbing?